we actually, quite frankly, we consider them dead. We do. Like, it's not part of the game plan. They're unhealthy. So we just go with who is available. And that's the mentality that we need to have, because we don't need to, sulk on who's not here.
Welcome onto the sideline, everybody. Sports Director Matt Dowell and Jared Parker are here with you, coming to you from Colonial Life Arena once again, where the South Carolina women's basketball team made quite a statement today. A 93-50 win over the Tennessee Lady Vols. And this was a statement, Jared. The Gamecocks handed the Lady Vols their worst loss in program history. I thought South Carolina would win this game, but Jared, this was so impressive. I did not think they would win it by 43.
Yeah, I mean, in the second half, when they started to just separate themselves further and further, it got to 25, a 25-point lead really quickly. And after what we saw in the first half, like you said, I wasn't surprised that South Carolina was winning, but oh my goodness, it just kept piling on. They were suffocating Tennessee defensively, and then just offensively, I think, 69%? They couldn't miss.
It was incredible. I think it was upwards of 72% or something for most of the game. And then, towards the end, it went down a little bit. But it was such an efficient day at the office for South Carolina on both ends of the floor. And this is one of those games that pretty much everything we talk about is positive. Yeah. But, of course, the name of the season, Jared, is injuries. So let's start there. We'll give you an injury update real quick. Maddie McDaniel and Okot McKeer did not play in this game. Okot we knew about a few days ago. Maddie was the one that took us all a bit by surprise. So I think the goal for this week is to get healthy for South Carolina, try and get Maddie and Okot back for a full roster. But Jared, first, I think what South Carolina is doing, this was basically a championship game in a way, because the winner of this was going to be in first place in the SEC by themselves. And for South Carolina to be in first place in the SEC with basically an 80% roster this whole time, with how good the SEC is this season, that says something about what this team is doing, what this coaching staff is doing. I'm just so impressed with what they're able to do when every single day we don't know who's going to be available that day.
Yeah, it's as you say. I mean, we've seen games where Tanaya's out. That's a crucial starter, and they still show up and they win. Today, with Maddie and Okot being out, Okot was starting for the past couple of games, so it's not like they're just missing anybody. They're missing people who consistently take up minutes in the lineup, consistently provide production on the court. And, I mean, to do what they did today at, like you said, 80% capacity, it bodes very well for the rest of the regular season. It bodes very well for the SEC tournament and even the NCAA tournament when, you're playing several games in a short time period and you don't know what you'll have.
And I think, so that was the bad news, is that Maddie and Okot were out for today. So we kind of thought, okay, this is a big game. Let's see what happens. But Jared, the Gamecocks just kept on trucking like they have all season long, because Tania Latson, the good news is she was back and ready to go today, back in the starting lineup. We saw that huge brace on her left knee, thinking, okay, she's playing, but, where is she at? And she said, I'm all right, because she scored 21 points in this game. She was just a menace on every part of the floor. So many steals, so many takeaways, so many buckets in transition. She played maybe her best game of the season. She's had a few, and she played great against Vandy as well. But with the injury, with the importance of this game, Tania not only looked good and looked healthy, but she just looked on her A game. She balled out today.
It's so interesting because with Tania Latson, I think, that first step she takes, she's really quick. And I think she didn't look quite as quick today, but it almost feels like because she knows she couldn't just rely necessarily on that quickness, you kind of saw the gears work and go, okay, how can I get open? How can I get easy buckets? And despite having her knee issue, she dominated in the fast break today. Lots of steals leading to fast break points. She found a way to just have an absolutely huge impact on this game, which was impressive to see for someone who was hampered and didn't look quite as quick as usual.
Yeah, she was putting on a show in the second half. I mean, just a straight up show. She had this place just electric. It was really cool to see her shine so brightly in a game that had so much attention on it on Super Bowl Sunday. Before we get into the rest of our game analysis, though, let's let you hear from Tania Latson about this injury journey with the knee that's kind of come up in the last week or so, how she dealt with it today, and also Dawn Staley, who had a great soundbite on how they're dealing with the injuries this season.
I felt good. I played in a knee brace before at Florida State, so I wasn't too foreign to that. Just getting back in shape and getting reps in practice has helped me a lot going into the game. And honestly, I just saw an open hole, so I just went to take it.
Well, we don't speak about the injured. We don't speak about them. We don't, if this happens or if she could play or that player could play, like we actually, quite frankly, we consider them dead. We do. Like it's not part of the game plan. They're unhealthy. So we just go with who is available. And that's the mentality that we need to have, because we don't need to, sulk on who's not here and what could happen. We just, whoever's available, it is the next woman up, and that's the way we practice. If we got 8, if we got 9, that's the way we practice. It may be shorter practices, but that's the way we handle it.
A really great press conference with Tania Latson, Dawn Staley, and we'll also hear from Madina Okot in a second, who was also in the press room and also had a great game because she's rebounding at an excellent rate these past few games, which has been huge for South Carolina on the boards. But Jared, let's get to the rest. I know Tania was the big one as she returned from injury, but let's talk about the rest of what was impressive, because I don't know what flaw you point out in a game like this. When you beat the Lady Vols, a top 20 team, by 43, I think it's all positives. When with everything that was on the line, the important takeaway for me is that South Carolina now controls their own destiny in this conference. The SEC is maybe better than it has ever been, and South Carolina now sits alone at the top with that one loss. Tennessee has 2 losses, Vandy has 2, Texas has 2, and South Carolina has beaten all of them. So even if South Carolina loses again, they will have the head-to-head edge. So they have a little bit of leeway. Obviously, they don't want to lose again, but there is some comfort in knowing that. So now they control their own destiny going forward. That's why I kind of thought of this as a championship game, and I thought the intensity, the chemistry, everything just looked so good in this game.
Right. That little leeway they have becomes a little bit dangerous, I know, for some teams at times. So I'm glad you mentioned it, because you can't relax too much. But yeah, I mean, it's, as you said earlier, it was kind of like sort of a de facto regular season championship, and they looked like they were playing in a championship game. Like, just I'm trying to think. You mentioned like you can't think of flaws. I can't either. Like they were on point everywhere. They shot well behind the arc. They attacked the paint viciously. I mean, they weren't just skillfully dominant. They were physically dominant. When you talk about Madina grabbing those rebounds, not all of them were easy rebounds. She was going up and she was snatching down boards. We saw Isla get in there. Isla looked like she was 6'6" herself, the way she was rebounding tonight. So it was just a domination on all scales of every front of basketball.
And I think, too, it was a team effort, like a full team effort. Everyone got a piece of the pie today. Tornabese is draining threes. All right, we're going to have to talk about that. Maybe not today, but at some point, because the shot is pure, and I don't know if I've seen a 6'7" player shoot the three like that. I mean, it's. I know Camilla shot the famous 3, but Alicia looks like she does this regularly, and she's already hit 3 in the past couple of games. So that lit this place on fire. Everybody had such good effort and intensity, and I've been trying to think with all of these injuries, like, where's this team going? Like what's the ceiling? Is it a championship team? Is it all the injuries? Is if they get to the Final Four, is that going to be a huge accomplishment for just what the adversity that South Carolina's had to deal with? But Jared, if they're healthy, and I don't know, this today kind of proved, maybe even if they're not, but if they play like this and they play like they did against Vanderbilt, the recent games that we've seen, this looks like a team that can win a national championship if they play like this. I know they've had games where they haven't looked, all in sync or whatever it is, but these games against Vanderbilt, Tennessee, even, on Thursday against Mississippi State, this caliber of play from South Carolina looks like a championship contending team to me.
Yeah, and it's one thing I think I've realized, despite all the rotations they've had to make because of injuries, I think so much of the credit, and Dawn Staley gives her a lot of credit too, is with Raven Johnson. She has just been just with all the confusion in the lineups and everything, she has been such a steady, calming force for this team that it makes me feel like whenever she is out there, they have a chance. No matter who's out there, no matter how many injuries they have. And, I mean, that's what we saw from her today. Just absolute, I want to talk about Super Bowl Sunday, absolute quarterback out there. I mean, we've referred to her as that before, of that offense and defense. And then, obviously, seeing her connect with Tanaya, they were just, like, that connection was just, like, on another level, on another plane today.
It was just awesome to watch. I think Raven will go down as one of the greatest Gamecocks of all time. I have been on the Raven train for a long, long time. I think she just does everything so well. And you can just see the impact. And if you don't see it, then you're not watching the games, because Raven is so good at what she does. And also, she's got an important game to watch because her boyfriend Nick Imanwari is playing in the Super Bowl. So a big Sunday for Raven and Nick and all of these, the Gamecock fans. It's a big Super Bowl Sunday. I think it's also, as we kind of transition to the sound we're going to hear from Dawn and Madina Okot. Let's talk about Okot, because she kind of went through a slump, and I don't think that's unusual. And I really liked what Dawn said a couple of weeks ago, where she said everyone wants her to be like Asia and Aaliyah and Camilla, these dominant bigs, but they all kind of built up to that moment. They all had that natural trajectory within the program. Madina just got here, a few months ago, and she's kind of expected to be on the same caliber as these Naismith winners and these Final Four most outstanding players. And maybe that was a bit unfair for all of us, to kind of think just because she's 6'6", she should go out there and do what they do. It's a new system. It's a new place. She needed some time to adjust. So maybe we all put those expectations on her too fast and didn't allow her that time to adjust. But Jared, it looks like that time on the bench, whatever they're working through in practice, is starting to pay off, because she's rebounding better, she's scoring the ball, she looks more comfortable in these past couple of weeks especially. I don't know, and even today, we'll hear from her in just a second, but she looked happy in the press room.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. She looked like she loved speaking to us about her game today, but it's like you mentioned, like what I loved seeing from her today is just a lot of the easy buckets she got, just making the right play on the offense so that her guards could find her and get her with easy layups. There were a couple post moves too where I was like, okay, Madina, we're seeing the footwork really start to develop, where she was able to get open herself. Obviously, cleaning the glass has always been a strength, and she did it as well as ever. It's interesting, though. I wanted to ask, when you mentioned that, expectations with Asia and the Camilla comparisons, has there been a big coming into the program that kind of had expectations on her like she has had this first year?
I don't know, because, Camilla was a transfer. Right. She came from Syracuse, but she also had Aaliyah in front of her. So she came off the bench. I don't know if, and Fams, you guys would know, so if I'm not remembering correctly, but I can't think of a post player and a center especially that was a transfer and was a starter, and was a huge piece of the puzzle. Aaliyah started from game one. Of course, Asia, is Asia. Camilla was able to build, she transferred in, but she was able to really grow in the system. So she didn't start till her senior year. She had 2 years behind Aaliyah Boston. That's a pretty good person to learn from, and so she knew the system. She knew all that stuff. So, yeah, I think Madina's just in an interesting spot where she's trying to be a huge focal point of this team, and doing so at a very rapid rate. And remember, she didn't start playing basketball till a few years ago. So there's all of these different bullet points you can make in her career, and she's doing, I think, a great job at it, because the numbers don't lie. And even on games, too, where she's not scoring a ton, she's rebounding, and that is a huge piece to the puzzle. Today, they rebounded exceptionally well, and I've said it many times, but the rebounding and the defense is the cornerstone of this program. And so as long as that stuff is there, the points and all of that will come. And I thought she looked, she went up against Janiah Barker today, who's a veteran in this game, in this SEC. She played at UCLA. She's been in part of some really good programs, and I thought Madina held her own. She looked really, really good. So, yeah, shout out to Madina Okot, because she is doing well, and she is learning and growing every day in this new system. with attention that she has never had on her before on a national scale, and so that's not easy to deal with, and she's doing a great job at it. But let's take you inside the press room to hear from Madina Okot, who is feeling really good after this game. And also I asked Dawn Staley about how the Gamecocks now control their own destiny in the SEC.
I feel like where it's normal, but it's not normal for players like to go through what I'm going through or maybe what I went through. And I'm just so grateful for my teammates and the coaching staff for being there for me. And I really needed that. Like I needed the break to come off the bench. As Coach said, the pressure, I feel like I had too much pressure and she had to take it off of me for some time. And I'm back.
It's the same role for us. Like it's the same exact role where we've been the top team in this league and taken on everybody's best. I'm hoping it works adversely, for our opponents. Like they play so hard that it gets them out of whack. And I hope we just stay calm with just dealing with the wave of pressure that comes with this normal pressure. It's the normal pressure of being at the top of our conference, being a team that's won a national championship. We get people's best. So I hope at some point it backfires on them.
Now, before we wrap up, I do want to talk about Tennessee real quick. I know we're a South Carolina podcast, but Tennessee is a blue blood in this game. They are iconic. They are legendary, whatever you want to say. They're a huge brand in this game. So, Jared, this was a 43-point loss for the Lady Vols, the worst in their program's history. They just lost by 30 to UConn a week ago. They're in a tough spot, and I know Kim Caldwell's in her second year, and we'll let you guys hear the press conference here in a minute. I thought the press conference was strange. You were in there as well. We were in there together, but I don't know if it's a mind game with the players. I don't know what the strategy is. Again, I don't cover Tennessee, so I don't get to watch all of the press conferences all of the time. But I don't know what the disconnect is because she said she thought the team quit on them. I think we kind of saw that in the second half. There was not a lot of energy. They only had 9 points in the second half for a huge chunk of that time. At one point, they had shot 24 field goals in the second half. 21 of those were threes. It didn't really look like there was a strategy or a scheme or anything. It was just kind of odd to watch. And then so it was odd to watch, and then it was odd to listen to the press conference where there just seems to be a disconnect. Again, I don't know if it's mind games. I don't know if it's a coach trying to motivate them that way. I don't know if that's the way to do it. Just what are your thoughts? Because it was only like 4 minutes long. It was just weird. It was weird.
Yeah, it was. It was weird and straight to the point. There was no warm up. It was just straight to the point. But I don't know, when you look at this team, it feels like with Tennessee, with the other day showing up late to warm ups before the game. And the way that they've been competitive, they were competitive against UConn in the first half, competitive against South Carolina, and just absolute fizzling out in the second half. It feels like there's something strange going on there that is not basketball related. There's some level, I don't know if it's a level of respect, if it's a level of desire, what it is, but it feels like the issues that are hurting them are not basketball related because we know they can compete with the best teams. I'm not saying that they would beat the best teams like UConn and South Carolina, but we know they can compete. So then when you see these huge, especially losses come in the second half, it makes you feel like, okay, there's something mentally, maybe as a team chemistry, team culture, there's something wrong there that extends further than the hardwood.
Yeah, and I don't know what the answer is, but the energy is weird. It was just kind of a strange vibe with the Lady Vols afterwards. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that this is a fan base that loves this brand and loves this program, and they cannot be happy with the way things went today. But let's let you hear from Kim Caldwell about her takeaways from this game. It wasn't good. There weren't a lot of good takeaways for them. And also, Jared did ask Dawn Staley just kind of how you work with a team that you feel has quit on you.
We just had a lot of quit in us tonight, and that's been something that's been consistent with our team is we're not comfortable and things don't go our way, and I have a team that'll just quit on you. And you can't do that in big games. You can't do that anytime in the SEC, but you certainly can't do that at a program like this. They have to fix it. They have to decide they want to fix it.
I guess on a similar note, when you're sitting there in the third and fourth quarter and things are starting to snowball and you're in the huddles, what's the reaction from the team in those moments? Do you feel like they're kind of mentally where they need to be, or are they just kind of saying they're defeated?
I don't necessarily know that they're sitting there defeated. I don't know that. I do know we don't have the leadership we need player-wise. And we've talked about for a couple weeks, it can come from anyone, anywhere, but we do need somebody that is respected and does things the right way to step up and lead this team from a player standpoint.
For a young coach like Kim, coaching for the traditional powerhouse of Tennessee, for me, I probably wouldn't say it publicly. That's one. Two, you just gotta, you gotta get your team to buy in, and sometimes it's tricking them, because it's a game. It's a game that you really have to balance and play with the players, because they know they played like ish, right? They know they did. Sometimes you need to bring what good happened. If you can find some good in it, hey, if we did more of this. Some of that might just kind of relax them a little bit, because competitors know when they don't play well. Competitors know when they need to change their mindsets, and you need the majority. You need the majority of your team thinking the same way, and it has to be positive. If it's negative, you're going to get negative results. So I would start from there.
I thought it was really interesting that Dawn said she probably wouldn't have made that public, and I think we all kind of agreed. I think that's why we were all so shocked, because it was brutally honest, so credit to Kim for giving us honest answers. But is that something you keep in-house? That's kind of what we were all like, is this the best way to go about it? I don't know. That's the question.
Right. I mean, no one knows her team better than Kim, so I think obviously my initial reaction was, I would probably want to keep this in-house as well, but who knows? Maybe, like you said, it is a type of game, a type of challenge, maybe, to put that out in public and say, now everyone knows what's going on. Let's see how you respond. Will it work? Who knows? Yeah. But you might have to kind of gamify these things. And obviously, Dawn said that you kind of do have to play the game with your players. So I guess time will only tell if it works.
And for Tennessee, it's an interesting part of the season, because even though they were 7-1, this was their first SEC game really against like what I see as the top echelon of the SEC. So they still have to play LSU and Texas and Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. So they're kind of at a crossroads of like, where do they go from here? And I know Tennessee is so good for the game. It's always more fun when the Lady Vols are in the conversation, not just in this conference, but, around the country. And, I'm an AP voter, so they do have a ton of talent. And in the preseason, I had them, I think 7 or 8 in the country. I thought they were going to, just on paper, they have what it takes. So I don't know if it's the system. I don't know if, like you said, if it's just something behind the scenes that we don't know about. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm very curious to see where Tennessee goes from here after losing by 30 to UConn, and now a program worse loss here in Columbia. But Jared, as we wrap up this show, South Carolina now has kind of a bye week, because their next game is on a Saturday night, which is very unusual, very unique, and it's a big one. It's against LSU, but I think for South Carolina, the goal this week just has to be everyone get healthy, rest up, and recharge.
Yeah, absolutely, because you're going into Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge will not be a friendly environment to you. So I think you want to go in there as strong as possible, because as we've seen with the South Carolina and LSU game, sometimes it's a little more than just what's on the court. So I think having everyone there, not just skill-wise and physically, but mentally there, would be very valuable for that.
Absolutely. And we will have a preview episode, an official preview episode of South Carolina LSU later on this week. So we will have our full thoughts on that. We're not going to break down that game just yet, as today is all about the Gamecocks beating the Lady Vols. I'm also working with the team since we do have a few days. Hopefully we can get one of them in the podcast studio just to talk about their lives and their careers and all of that. So that is not official. I've made the mistake many times of promising things on this podcast, and then things go by the wayside. So I'm not promising anything, but I am hopeful that we can get somebody from the team, since they do have a few days off, to come in the podcast studio and join us. So hopefully that happens. Maybe not, but no matter what, we will have a preview of South Carolina and LSU later on this week. But Jared, this was a fun day at Colonial Life Arena. A historic day, in so many ways. And if you're South Carolina, if you're a fan, if you're just a fan of women's basketball, this was a game between this, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt. South Carolina looks like they are getting better and better, more confident, more chemistry, more comfortable, all the C's, all of those things. So it'll be a big one next week in Baton Rouge, but South Carolina now sitting in first place in the SEC. Jared, anything else?
I'm ready for Saturday.
Ready for Saturday, the big one. But we get a few days off, too, because the men also don't play till Saturday.
Yeah.
So we got a few days to kind of breathe before Saturday. Oh, man, I'm kind of dreading it in so many ways. But looking forward to Saturday between South Carolina and LSU. It'll be cinema, as it always is. He's Jared Parker. I'm Matt Dowell. Thank you guys, as always, for watching and listening on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or follow us wherever you listen to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon Music. He's Jared. I'm Matt. We'll see you next time here on The Sideline.